One of the biggest things that surprised me when I first started taking writing seriously was something people call the craft. Now, my working assumption going in was really simple. The craft equals the writing, the sentences, the prose, and the words on the page. And that's what I thought I needed to learn. Now, the further I got into it, the more I realised that's not really what the craft is. The craft is something much bigger. It's much bigger than the writing, and the writing is almost the last thing that happens within it. So that's what I want to explore today. Why the craft is much more than just the writing, and what's actually going on behind the written word. But hey, if this is the first time that we're meeting, I'm AKGuile. I'm an independent author and publisher. I've got one book finished and another in production, and I write under the pen name AKGuile. And before all of this, I spent my career as a business consultant. So I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm not a guru. I'm just sharing what's working for me as I learn this. But if you find this useful, do me a favour, please like and subscribe and help me grow this channel. With that said, let's get back to the craft. Now for me, the craft looks something like this. It's a chain. I have a plot, I have a genre, I have an arc, I have a structure, I have acts, chapters, scenes and beats. I have a world, I have characters who live in that world, and I have a voice that I tell the story in. And then, and only then, do I sit down and actually start to write the prose. Now let me walk you through what each of these mean and why each one is important to me. Now the plot is the question that the book is asking. What's actually happening in this book at the highest possible level? Not the event, not the detail. It's almost the answer to the question, what is this book about? And it's the story spine that we looked at in the last video. Now, genre is a set of expectations that the reader brings with them. Every genre has a contract between you, the author, and your reader. Crime fiction has a contract. It's a different contract than historical fiction. It's a different contract than horror. It's a different contract than romance. Genre is the contract that you make with your reader when you write something inside a certain genre. Arc is the shape of the change of your story. It's where your story starts and it's where your story ends. And it's what goes on in the middle. And it's how that impacts everything in the story, the characters, the emotions you want your readers to have, everything. And your structure is how that arc is held together. And for me, every book in the Greymere series has 3 acts, and it's sandwiched between a prologue and an epilogue. And that's the structural shape of every one of my novels. It's a constraint I've chosen, and it does a lot of work when I come to plan out the books. Then I've got my acts, my chapters, my scenes and my beats, and it's where the structure gets broken down to something you can actually write. An act is a movement, a chapter is a unit of progress inside that movement, a scene is a moment inside the chapter, and a beat is the smallest piece, a single thing that happens, and it's the beats I actually write to. Now the world is where the story lives, and for me that's Greymere. You can see it here on my background. It's a fictional city in the north of England with its own geography, its own history and its own weather. And the world is more than this backdrop. It's the thing that shapes what's possible in the entire story. And the characters are the people who live inside that world. Not just names on a page, not just descriptions. They have backstories, they have hopes, they have dreams, they have fears. They are things that they want, things that they're hiding. They coexist with each other. They push against the world, against Greymere, and Greymere shapes them and pushes back. All that's going on inside my characters, inside my world. And the voice is how the story sounds when it's told. And the voice I use for Johnny Steele crime novels is not the voice I'm using as I develop Ellen's story at different projects. Ellen's story is a different voice. It's warmer, it's more hopeful, it's more inviting. Johnny's voice is colder, it's harsher, it's bleaker. They're both by the same author in the same world, in the same genre, but they're very different voices that I'm doing. So here's what I find useful about this approach. Each link narrows itself down and narrows what comes after it. And by the time I'm sitting down to write a beat, I'm not facing a blank page. I'm answering specific questions with all of that knowledge behind it. Let me give you a concrete example of what I exactly mean. Say the beat is about Johnny and Leia sitting at the kitchen table, and the question I'm asking myself is, what's the conversation between Johnny and Leia at the kitchen table? That's the beat. Now on its own it's meaningless, it means nothing, but by the time I get there I already know I'm in book 2 of the Johnny Steele series, which means I know the plot, I know the genre, so I know the contracts I'm working under, I know the arc, so I know where this scene sits in the larger movement, I know the act, I know the chapter, I know the scene that this belongs to. I know the world. I know Johnny's kitchen. I know what time of day it is. I know what happens in the chapter before this. I know what happens in the chapter after this. I know who Johnny is. I know who Leia is. And I know about their relationship. And I know the voice that I want to write inside. So with all of that knowledge pushing down onto this very, very simple question here, I can actually go ahead and answer the question. Leia was at the far end of the table with her laptop open, working a piece for the Chronicle, and Johnny was watching her. She didn't look up. You're staring. I'm thinking. He reached for his mug. The tea was nearly cold. I can't sit around here spending my pension. Leia stopped typing. She didn't close the laptop. Not yet. There's still Cade, he said. There's still the half of Greymere the list never got to. I've been pretending it's not there for 3 months and it's still there. She closed the laptop. I've been waiting for you to say that. And that's it. That's the beat answered. The prose might be rubbish at this point, but that's fine because I'll fix that in the edit. But what I've done is I've got the story down. Structurally, it's okay. The dialogue is included. By answering that one simple question, I've got something down on the page that makes sense. And the next beat picks up from there. The conversation at the kitchen table has got to lead somewhere. And the next beat will ask the next question. And maybe it's Johnny asking Leia to work on the case with him. And Leia's response. Maybe Leia's pushing back and saying, that's stupid. And Johnny's response. Whatever it is, it's the next question in the chain. And I can answer it in exactly the same way. And the beats link together, one question at a time, inside a scene, inside a chapter, etc., etc., etc. The story starts to build itself. So when you first hear this, it may feel like a bit counterintuitive. All these decisions you have to make, your plot, your genre, your art, your structure, your world, and it sounds like a set of constraints. And in some ways it is, and it's not for everybody. But for me, they're healthy constraints. And it's the constraints that strangely allow me to be more creative and not less. I can have the big creative conversations at the arc level, and I can work out what I want a chapter to do. I can really think about how a scene is going to move that chapter forward, and I can think about how each beat adds value and answers a question as I go through that scene. And all of that creative work happens before I write a prose. So when I sit down to write the prose, it means I'm not focusing on the complexity. I can focus on the writing. Now there's a balance to strike here. The more granular your beats are, the easier things are to write, but the more work you've got to put into the planning phase. The finer the beat, the more the planning work. So there's a point where each writer has to find that works for them. And for me, I've landed on beats that are slightly larger than a single action, and they allow me to write about 400 to 500 words because that lets the dialogue breathe. And I can find I can easily write that without getting too stressed and wandering. So with my average chapter running at 3,000 to 4,000 words in length for a Johnny Steele type book, that's about 6 to 8 beats per chapter, 6 to 8 questions I have to answer to write a chapter. That's easy. I can do that. Now, before I worked in this way, I tried to write about the chain in place, without this process in place. I had an idea, I sat down, I started writing in Google Sheets. And it feels great, the freedom it brings for the first hour or so. But once you get the chapter 1 done and you've written chapter 2 and you go back and you start to look at them, you realise that they don't really hang together. There's contradictions inside them, they don't really mesh. The story's getting a bit confused. So you're not sure where it's going to go to next. And I found it got very hard to write forward because there was nothing pulling the next chapter into shape. And that's a blank page problem right there. People think that the blank page is a writing problem. For me, it isn't. It's an upstream problem. It's a structural problem. If you're sitting in front of a blank page with no idea what to write, it's not because you can't write. It's because the decisions that you should have made before you got there haven't been made yet, and you're trying to make those as you're facing your blank page. Now in future videos, when I get into the way I plan and the structure of my writing week, you'll see that I pretty much know what I'm going to write on any given day and how it fits into the whole. The blank page just isn't there for me anymore. My writing isn't an essay I'm trying to think my way through. It's a coherent story with a plan behind it. And I know exactly what questions I'm answering on any given day inside that journey. So for me, the craft isn't the prose. The craft is the chain of decisions that make the prose possible. The plot, the genre, the arc, the structure, the acts, the chapters, the scenes, the beats, the world, the characters, the voice. Each one narrows what comes after it, and by the time you're sitting down, or I find I'm sitting down to write, I'm answering a specific question instead of facing a blank page. Over the next 7 videos, I'm going to take each link in this chain in turn and we're going to deep dive on it one video at a time to show you how I actually do it. I'm not saying this is the right way or the only way. I'm saying it's a way I've developed that works for me. And take from it what you will and leave what you don't like. Let me know in the comments where you're up to on your journey. Have you had that blank page experience? How did you overcome it? Does any of this stuff I'm talking about resonate? Do you think it would work for you? Drop me a comment and let me know. I'll be interested in your opinions. So that's it for today. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, take care.